Hi, I'm Vander Gack, Northeast SARE's Communications Specialist. The call for 2024 Partnership Grant Proposals is currently open. We've updated our previous Partnership Grant webinar with new information. You can check out our website or YouTube page for a video walkthrough on how to submit your project proposal. You can also visit our website, northeastsare.org, and sign up for our mailing list to stay up to date on this and other grant programs. This video has updated dates and questions, but Northeast SARE has also updated our outcome statement. Our outcome statement, which is the guiding principle behind our work, is Northeast agricultural communities honor the holistic connection among land, water, air, and all living beings. Agriculture in the Northeast is accessible, sustainable, and just, addressing historic and current inequities so all farmers and farm employees can steward resources to ensure sustainability, resilience, economic viability, and a high quality of life. And now I'm going to pass it off to Farmer Grant Administrator Candace Huber.
So the first criteria for our program is that your project has to take place in our region. So in one of these states. In a nutshell, here are the basics of the program. To be eligible to apply, your occupation has to be something where you work with farmers in the Northeast region, and you have to partner with at least one commercial farmer for the project. Your project must address an opportunity to improve the sustainability of farms. The maximum amount you can request is $30,000, and funds are paid to you as reimbursements, so you need to have the capacity to make any purchases up front. The length of the project can run anywhere from 1 to 3 years, but no earlier than the start date of August 1st. And you can only submit one application per program per year. So if you have a couple of ideas, choose just the best one.
The proposal deadline is April 9th at 5 p.m. So be sure to have all your materials prepared to make that deadline.
Anyone who works with farmers can apply. You can be with a nonprofit organization, an academic or outreach organization. You can be a for-profit business. We get a lot of veterinarians applying. You can be a municipality, county conservation districts commonly apply. You can be with the State Department of Agriculture, and even federal employees can apply, although they often can't get paid for their time on the project since it's federal funding. Now, if you are a farmer who also does consulting for other farms on the side, you would be eligible to apply as long as you have another farm that you're partnering with. But if you're a farmer and looking to apply for a project on your own, you would not be eligible for this program, and you could wait for our farmer grant program that is offered in the fall and apply then. So the basis of SARE projects is how can we make farming more sustainable? So project topics should address at least one of these aspects of sustainability. You need to benefit the environment, how to reduce pollution, the profitability of farms, conservation, how to improve the stewardship of the land, farm labor in order to sustain operations, and enhancing the quality of life for farmers, their employees, and the people around them. All of these will benefit farmers long term, and your project needs to address just at least one of them. We fund a wide range of topics. Some examples from the last couple of years are aquaculture, beekeeping or pollination, any sort of crop or livestock production, such as variety trials, cultivation methods, soil health, including composting. We had a question about composting was an eligible topic, nutrient management or pest and disease control. And you can work with certain commodities, but your project doesn't have to be commodity specific. Business management may not apply to a specific commodity. For example, Juliet Glass of the Maryland Farmers Market Association had a project marketing for farmers in the digital age, and she produced a guide to social media for farmers. Education projects are also eligible as long as you develop some new educational resource or adapt existing resources to apply them to a new audience of farmers. And you can also develop a product or test a product. For example, we had a project looking at an electric walking tractor, like in the photo here, called the Weed Weasel. If you are developing a prototype using SARE funds, you will be required to share the design. However, if you're testing an existing product or design, then you're not required to share the design or the ingredients. You just need to share the results of your testing. And if you would like more examples of what we fund, you can go to our projects database at projects.sare.org and search for projects in our region. Now, for partnership grants, you are required to partner with a farmer who will contribute to both the planning and implementation of the project. The farm must be a commercial operation with an established farm income of at least $1,000. This is the USDA definition of a farm. A commercial farmer is eligible to be a partner farm, but maybe a farm enterprise where the primary mission is education and not selling their produce would not be eligible. Many institutions have research farms that are not commercial farms, and so these would not qualify as a partner farm. However, you can duplicate the research on the research farm as part of your project to be able to collect more data and enhance the results. Ideally, the farmer would have experience in the topic area, but if not, it's a good idea to get another collaborator on board who could provide that experience. Now, the farmer will need to provide a letter of commitment, so be sure to allow time to collect that as they can get super busy in the spring. And this is a required document and must be submitted by the deadline.
My name is Sam Anderson. I'm an urban agriculture specialist with Cornell Cooperative Extension based in New York City. I'll talk more about that really briefly. Just a very quick background, just to say that before working for Cornell in the city, sorry, next slide, please.
Sorry.
Yep. I had past experience at nonprofits and including getting a partnership grant in 2014 as well. And so I might mention that a little bit, but I'll mostly talk about the one that I'm working on right now. There we are. So just to let you know sort of who we are as applicants, or who I am as an applicant. So Cornell Cooperative Extension's Urban Agriculture Program is, well, sort of not a formal entity exactly, but the two of us, my colleague Yolanda and myself, work in all 5 boroughs of New York City, and we basically provide extension type of assistance, so technical assistance, workshops and education, and a lot of very miscellaneous behind the scenes ways of helping people. And we provide that to urban farmers, and there are more than 30 urban farms across the city. This grant that I most recently applied for is about two-spotted spider mite, which is a frequent pest. It's usually a greenhouse pest, but on urban farms in New York City, we find that it's a pretty serious pest of tomatoes and cucumbers and some other plants outdoors, which is unlike agriculture in most of the Northeast, which is where I had been working previously, and was not used to the idea of this as an outdoor pest, and neither were most of the farmers. So most people didn't even realize they had it. And so quickly, realizing that it was a pretty serious problem across the city, I had some questions, and so well, the first thing is that this seemed like a topic worth addressing and maybe diving more deeply into, because we didn't have good solutions. We didn't have good answers. The biggest questions being, why is it so damaging on urban farms and not so damaging outside the city? Is it because of the different climate in the city, the urban heat island effect, which means nighttime temperatures are 5 to 7 degrees Fahrenheit warmer. Like the nighttime lows are warmer in the city than they are outside the city, and that's a whole topic of its own. But it means that we have some pests that aren't supposed to overwinter here that do. It also and that we also have, it might be because of a lack of natural enemies, which keep spider mites in check in a lot of other places. So these are all just questions, and I talked to colleagues about it, and nobody knew for sure what was going on. And so the most important thing then was to talk to the farmers, to think about what management strategies would be effective and readily adopted on urban farms, because whatever people were doing now wasn't working yet. And important qualifications here being to be appropriate for the farmers, not just the farmers who'd be participating in a grant, but the farmers who would be the target audience, is that urban farmers want minimal use of pesticides. When they do, it's going to be OMRI approved materials, but often as minimal use as they can. so conventional pesticides are mostly out, and then just as is the case, I think for most partnership grants, keeping in mind that what you're asking, and also a lot of times the practice itself, needs to not be too big of a lift, probably, and not too big of a departure from existing practices. Otherwise, it's just not going to get adopted, most likely. So this is okay. So these are my sort of tips from doing a couple of these before. But also this was the process I went through here with talking to the farmers. So is not, even though this, as opposed to a farmer grant, this is one where, of course, as a service provider, I would be the one leading the grant, but if the farmers don't buy into it, then it's not going anywhere. So making sure to talk to the farmers, work through, is this a real issue for them here? Are they excited about the thing that I might want to do? But also, what are some of their own ideas? So that, making sure that even though it's not farmer led, they need to be very active participants, or at least excited about it, at least a little bit excited about it. And then also, if they have great ideas, some ideas we all probably go into, if you're on a call like this, you probably have a bunch of different grant ideas swimming in your head. Some of them, we can't go after everything. So some of them might actually be better for the farmer to go after as a SARE farmer grant, and then we sign on as a service provider or not. So that's the other thing. And there were a couple of, times that people had really cool ideas, and I said, you should apply for a SARE farmer grant when that comes around. And, let me know and I'll try and help with that. And then at the end of the day, you have to be excited about the idea too. This isn't a grant where it's going to, it's not going to pay all of your salary, presumably. It's a smaller grant. It's for a defined project. This is my thinking on it, right? And that you should really be excited about it. And this is part of what it's doing is giving you excuse to work on something you really want to work on, So what we did for this grant, and this was again after talking to farmers and after getting feedback from some colleagues who know a lot about spider mites, was to propose a scouting protocol. So there are 4 partner farms in this, and actually added another one afterward, who isn't. That's another thing, is that other people heard about it. They sort of wanted to get interested, so leaving it open-ended so that other people might have a way of participating, even if not formally. And so scouting protocol, putting bean plants at the ends of tomato rows, because it's easier to scout those for spider mites. They're fewer leaves, it's a lot more visible, and it tends to show up earlier on beans than tomatoes. And then working with farmers and farm crew to develop scouting protocols that would be useful for that they're going to be likely to adopt. And so getting farmer input on how can we set up a way to scout for spider mites that's going to fit into your daily routine. So I left that a little bit open-ended in the proposal, figuring that farmers would have thoughts, and we probably would end up with a different method than whatever I thought we would do going into it, which is, I think, a common theme for a lot of grants when you're partnering with farmers. And then the next step being to release biocontrols, so release natural enemies, which we purchased from a supplier who IPM Labs in upstate New York, and also work closely with the person who runs that, Carol Glenister, is the owner of that. And so she was in on the grant and helped to design this. And so when we release these biocontrols in response to the scouting, when farmers told me that they saw spider mites, or when I saw it, because I did field visits as well as part of this, scheduled every 3 weeks, I think it was, then we would release it, in response to that. And some of them were preventive. I won't get into all the details there, but basically just having this sort of a schedule. And then we also put in habitat plantings for attracting and maintaining natural enemies that might already be present, but maybe just not in enough numbers to be making much difference. And that, again, was partly in response. I wasn't necessarily sure if that was going to work that well. It wasn't what I was thinking about originally, but farmers were really interested in that. And that was one of the things that came up when I would talk to farmers about this idea before writing anything down. And so I included it because it was something that farmers, were interested in and wanted to do. So then other thoughts, and again, this is also about my process, was, well, and actually, okay, these are also lessons learned from the earlier partnership grant I got 6 years ago. back in Massachusetts, which was to come up with poultry enterprise budgets, and worked with 6 or 7 poultry farmers. And the idea of that one was that the farmers were going to track certain things along the way during the season. It was just for 1 year, and then we would put that together, get all that data together and create like a sort of composite poultry enterprise budget for pasture raised broilers and pasture raised layers. And one of the things I learned from that is it's important to not both be very clear to yourself and to the farmers about what you're actually asking them to do, and be certain that it's realistic before you write it down. It's easy to get ambitious when you're writing a grant proposal of any kind, because it feels like maybe because it feels like it's going to be more competitive that way, or maybe because you just feel ambitious. I think I had a case of both of those things back then. And if you overshoot, then it can be pretty hard to execute on that idea. And then what exactly will the farmers get out of the grant? How's it going to be worth their while? Again, with the poultry enterprise one, all I really had to offer was, maybe these enterprise budgets will be useful for you, or maybe when we talk about these numbers, it'll be useful for you, and here's a stipend. With the, learning from that, when it was hard to get all that data from farmers, and what I was asking them to do with those poultry budgets was outside of their day-to-day routine. It was extra work beyond what it really should have been. So learning from that, in this case, when we talked with farmers about what they would like to do, I already knew the farmers well enough that I knew a little bit about sort of their routines, and so we were able to talk about, how can we fit this into what you're already doing, or what some of your staff are already doing, so that it's not adding, the additional work is minimal. And then also, how's it going to be worth their while? And that really just comes back to making sure that what we're doing, the solution is something they want to know about. Like, this is a thing that is a real issue on their farm. It's not just a pet project of mine. It's something that causes them stress. That keeps them up at night, maybe even, because it causes a lot of losses on the farm. So finding a solution is really something they are genuinely interested in. And then making sure that it's, this again is sort of my own thought on it, but is that I'm not going to apply for something like this unless it's something that I would want to do, even if I don't get the grant. Maybe it would be in a different form if I don't get the grant. It might be a lot smaller, or it might be less involved, but it's something that's important enough that the work I put into writing a grant proposal, if I don't get it, some of that legwork I'm still going to use to, in some way or another, to carry out whatever parts of it I can manage to carry out without the funding. I think it's good for incentive, when you're writing it, but I think it's also tells you that the topic you're choosing is worthwhile.
There are certain allowable expenses and certain not allowable expenses. So first we'll look at what's allowable. Personnel time, that's time spent on project tasks, maybe your time or that of one of your employees. Someone asked if there's a cap on the amount of time allowed for personnel, and the answer is no, but the amount of time does need to be justified and reasonable for the project. Materials and supplies are allowed. That would be like flagging, collection vials, feed, fertilizer, that sort of thing. Travel, sometimes you have to travel, maybe as part of the study or for outreach to present your results at a conference. Printing and publications, you may want to print a flyer for a field day or a fact sheet with your study results. And then there are other direct costs, which include, for example, equipment rental, soil tests, consultant fees, and more. Now, we talked about the time or a stipend for a farmer you're working with, and that would go under consultant. They would be listed as a consultant in your budget. So everything you request funding for must be directly related to the work you're proposing to do. Some things that SARE does not cover are, we can't pay for you to build a structure like a barn or do a major renovation. We can't cover the purchase of equipment that you or your farmer would normally use in your operations. SARE prefers that you rent any equipment you might need, but sometimes purchasing is the only option. So if that's the case, and it's specialized equipment required for the project, it could potentially be covered fully or on a prorated basis if it has a useful life beyond the project. So if you have any questions about equipment, you can call me and ask. Cell phones and cell charges are not allowed. Food is not allowed unless it's necessary for the continuity of the meeting, as in there's no other option for participants to get sustenance. We can't pay for any swag or incentives, and we won't cover labor or operating expenses for what you or the farmer normally do. It has to go beyond normal operations and be specific to the project. As I've said, the maximum amount you can request is $30,000, but you don't need to ask for that full amount, and you want to be sure that the amount requested is appropriate to your project. So proposals with higher funding requests, closer to that 30,000 mark, should clearly justify the need for a more robust budget. So this could include multi-year projects for longer or more thorough documentation of results or changes. For instance, in field studies, more money could allow for more replications. We also encourage social science projects, and in those you often have trainings or some sort of education, and then you need time to do follow-up surveys to see if the farmers changed their behavior. A more robust budget could also include multi-institution or multidisciplinary collaboration. We encourage more collaboration, and it may cost more to include more people in your project. There could be more complex subject matter, maybe something that looks at multiple systems, or perhaps you'll do some extra outreach and dissemination of your results. And while outreach is a requirement of the project regardless, more money may allow you to reach even more farmers in a meaningful way. All that being said, we also do encourage simpler one-year projects for less money. And this, we hope, would be helpful to applicants who are new to writing grants. It's a competitive process, and we want to be sure that folks know that smaller projects have just as good of a chance to be funded. So in the call for proposals, there are step-by-step instructions for completing the proposal online. For the main proposal questions, we highly recommend that you prepare your answers offline before entering them into the online system. To that end, on page 5 of the call for proposals, there's a link to a Word doc format of these questions, and you can use this to prepare your answers. And be sure to pay special attention to the word limits for each question. So first, you'll need to write a proposal summary. This is a standalone summary of the project, and it should briefly describe the issue, the objectives, the key components of your plan of work, and your outreach strategy. Now, since the summary is the first thing reviewers will see, we recommend taking some time to make it clear and compelling. You may want to write this even after you've written the rest of your proposal, when you're clear about all the other pieces of your proposal. Next, you'll provide applicant and collaborator information. This is where you describe your team, including you, your partner farmer, and any additional key collaborators. You want to be sure for each person to describe their experience, skills, and capacity for the work, as well as what they will contribute and the work they will perform. Reviewers will want to know that you'll be able to carry out the project. In this section, you'll also need to enter the names and contact information for your farmers and collaborators, along with a brief statement of what their role is in the project. So be sure to have that information on hand. The next section is the problem and proposed solution. What's the issue or the opportunity that you're addressing, and why is it important, and what can you do to make it better? You want to convince reviewers that the issue or opportunity affects other farmers and that there's a demonstrated need for that work. Next, you will discuss previous work. You'll describe what's already been tried and how your project builds on existing efforts. Reviewers will want to see that you're up to date with current information. And you'll need to provide a list of citations that you reference when you discuss the previous work, or as well as anywhere else in your proposal. Then you want to clearly state your project's objectives, be specific in stating the questions you're asking, and then lay out your materials and methods. Reviewers want to know that your methods will get you to the results that are meaningful and will answer your questions, so you can align them directly with your objectives. Be specific and state exactly what you will do, what items you will use, and how you're going to do it. This is also where you can upload any supporting documents, such as diagrams, sample questionnaires, or anything that could help reviewers understand what you're going to do and how. Then you'll describe your outreach plan, explain what you're going to do to tell farmers and others in the agricultural community about your project and results. This could be demonstrations, twilight meetings, a guide, video, webinars. There are many, many options, but just know it does not have to be an in-person event. And lastly, you're going to provide your timeline. You want to lay out each activity from your methods all the way through to your outreach, when, who will do them, and how long it will take. This should align with your methods and also with your budget.
You'll also see a question about the farming community that the project will engage. This could be as partner farmers or as targeted in your outreach. SARE particularly is looking for engagement with underserved communities.
And now I'm just going to summarize some of the final tips for submitting your proposal. Make sure that your project is a good match for SARE and that you're eligible. Read the call for proposals so you know what you need to provide. Start early, discuss your project with your farmers well in advance. Prepare your application offline and ask others to review it. Write with reviewers in mind. Reviewers have broad agricultural experience, but may not be deeply familiar with your topic. So avoid unnecessary jargon and make it clear and easy for reviewers to understand what you're going to do and why. Develop your budget. Think through your project and the expenses you will need to make. Don't pull numbers out of a hat, but get real pricing. And remember the attachments. Don't wait until the last minute to get letters or signatures. On our website, you will find the call for proposals, an Excel template for the required budget narrative and justification, and the grant commitment form. And we also have the definition of the farm document posted there.
So that's it. At any point along the way, please feel free to contact me with questions.